Hello, and welcome to Stingray Tom's Florida. This is my 2020 year in review. Join me as I take a look at some of the places I've visited in the past year. Firstly, I was lucky to have several traveling companions this year. As much as I like exploring on my own, having friends along just adds to the fun. I learn from all of them, especially when I can learn what they're interested in visiting. So let's look at my year. Instead of just running through a list, I wanted to share a few highlights, explore a couple themes, and look back at a few lost attractions. At the end of the video, I'll provide a list of where I traveled. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments. And as always, I'll be sharing lots of photos. The biggest highlight for me was hanging out with birds. Seriously, I'm crazy about all animals, but when I can hang out with a highly threatened species in the wild, it's really a special day. Or make that 2 days. I was able to get back to Oscar Scherrer State Park south of Sarasota last fall and really enjoyed hanging out with the Florida scrub jays that call the park home. I'm used to being very patient when looking for birds to photograph, especially small ones, but in many cases scrub jays look for visitors. Oscar Scherrer is one of the best places to see them along with all sorts of other wildlife. It's really terrific to see their behavior there. The next highlight happened nearly a year ago on a trip to Vero Beach. I finally got around to spending some time at Disney's Vero Beach Resort, as it was entering its 20th anniversary year. The visit was extra special since I was shown around the resort by a Disney Legacy cast member who had been part of the staff for many years. It's so great when I can get a personal tour and ask all the questions I want. Not surprisingly, the resort is beautiful both in its architecture and landscaping. I particularly loved the wall of sea grapes and the giant hibiscus bushes. Other cast members pointed me to the hibiscus with the biggest blossoms. Disney's Vero Beach has a Peter Pan theme, so I was greeted by TikTok the crocodile. The resort's nearly always fully booked, even though it's not in a high tourism area, but it's obvious why. It's a great getaway, in many ways the exact opposite of Walt Disney World itself. My last highlight is an unusual one for me, and something I wouldn't have expected as I pulled into the parking lot. As a historian, I'm forever checking out history museums, yet I'm so often disappointed by what I see. Because of that, when I run across a small museum that thrills me, I really enjoy the experience. The History of Diving Museum in Isla Mirada is one such place. It was on my list of places to visit in the Middle Keys when I was there in December. Of course, if you're not interested in diving, it may not be the right museum for you, but if you're at all interested in what people do for a living or for recreation, or even if you're interested in the development of technology, then you'll get a lot out of this museum. It's got tons of displays packed into a small space. Nearly all are original parts of diving apparatus, while some of the objects are faithfully recreated models, especially in instances where originals don't exist at all. Everything is documented with short descriptions, and there are video presentations in several areas to give visitors a better understanding of how it all comes together. One of the best aspects is that it tells the stories of diving pioneers. For instance, while most people know of the French explorer Jacques Cousteau, few, if any, of the others who are profiled in a museum are actual celebrities. I should do a video on diving in Florida at some point, especially since going into detail about the history of diving museum is outside the scope of this video. On to what are basically random themes of my year, all of which typically occur organically. A year is too long to try and plan out exactly what to see and research. Heck, at this point I don't even know where I'll be visiting in most of 2021. The first theme was towers. It had been years since I visited the oft-forgotten Lake Placid Tower on US 27 south of Sebring, but I was in the area in January. It's closed to the public, but I photographed it both during the day and at night with its emerald green lights. Of course, there isn't an interstate in that area, so driving north, I headed up US 27. That leads directly to Bok Tower Gardens and the second tower on the old-time tourist route. It's easily the most beautiful tower in the state, and possibly in the country, but it also isn't open to the public as an observation tower. Leaving Bok behind and heading north once again, I got to Claremont and the Citrus Tower. This one is an observation tower, and even though visitors can no longer see citrus trees from the top, it gives a great view of the sunset. Even better is that there's a coffee bar in the lobby now, which means you can enjoy a snack while up at the top. By the way, here's the stats of each of the 3 towers. This shows the height and the overall elevation from sea level. Note that the highest natural point in Florida is 345 feet. Known as Britton Hill, it's located in the Panhandle close to Alabama and is lower in elevation than all 3 of these towers. Yet again, that's a teaser for an upcoming video, Florida's Highland Towers. So that was 3 towers in 4 hours along the spine of the peninsula. Certainly a unique Florida day trip, one that I hope you'll try. Now on to the second theme. Visiting Florida state parks, forests, and wildlife management areas is always an annual mission for me. All told, this year I visited around 25. You can see the list here. Over many years, I've probably been in 3/4 of them, but new ones are added nearly every year, and quite a few are only accessible by boat. I hope to visit each one eventually, but I've never made it an official goal. In the comments, let me know which are your favorites. I plan on making an overview video on parks and other state lands in the future, but here's a quick bit of general information about them. State parks are managed by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. There are currently about 185 parks and trails encompassing around 800,000 acres. These are often the state-owned land which is the most visitor-oriented. State parks can include museums, ranger-led educational programs and tours, reenactments, boating, restaurants, camping, archaeological sites, and more. State forests are managed by the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Holding over 1 million acres for the state, the forests are primarily set aside for the preservation of natural lands. While open to the public, they rarely have amenities beyond trail maps and porta potties. State forests are often used for managed hunting and timber harvesting. Wildlife management areas are handled by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, which controls 5.8 million acres of land and is one of the largest public hunting systems in the country. Of course, they are open to non-hunters during the parts of the year when hunting isn't allowed. The largest portion of Florida's land falls within the wildlife management areas. In all, the state manages nearly 8 million acres, which is approximately 12,000 square miles or 32,000 square kilometers. That's an area roughly equivalent to the state of Maryland. Florida is home to quite a diverse collection of ecosystems. Sure, we're missing mountains and deserts, but there are significant differences throughout the Panhandle and Peninsula, and Florida's public lands reflect these differences. For instance, take Highlands Hammock State Park in Sebring. For the uninitiated, the large park doesn't appear to have a great deal of ecosystem diversity. Most visitors see sandy areas and swampy areas, all covered with trees. But those are radically different habitats, even though they're only divided by an elevation difference of a few inches. Not only are most of the plants that make up the flora in the swampy area unique to that habitat, so are most of the animals. From tiny insects up to the alligator, they can only exist there, just like the scrubland and pine forest plants and animals keep to their specific habitat. Other than showing you some of the images I took this year, information about specific environments will also have to wait for future videos. Finally, I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on what we can call lost attractions. Nearly every year, at least one Florida attraction permanently closes. 2020 saw 2 significant attractions shut their doors. Both were located in the Orlando area, and both were unique to the state. The first was the Holy Land experience. Yes, this small theme park was a bit controversial as it was legally considered a church even though it operated as an attraction. It wasn't for everyone, of course, but it sincerely presented its theme through its architecture and design, as well as its displays and activities. I've known several of the park's performers over its years of operation, and Holy Land shows were typically good entertainment. It shut down in March and never had plans to reopen. The second attraction to close was the Skeletons Museum on International Drive. I was lucky enough to visit it multiple times and to get to speak with the owners and educational staff. Opened in 2015, it was one of the most interesting museums in the state, and it's a loss to Florida tourism and science education. The 500 or more animal skeletons that were on display were a remarkable sight that impressed young and old alike, and the place really focused on education. While it was only open for a few years in Orlando, its original home in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, is still open. It will be missed. Now, one of the goals I have as I travel around the state is to see if there's still some evidence of former attractions. When most businesses close, everything disappears eventually, except the buildings sometimes, so finding lasting proof is usually difficult or impossible. In 2020, I was able to visit a couple of places, however, that provide evidence of a rich past of Florida tourism. In Indian Shores near Clearwater is a beach access parking lot named Tiki Gardens. It's the final remnant of the attraction with the same name that operated from 1964 to around 1988. The land was purchased by the city of Indian Shores and converted into this pay parking lot with little remaining except the Tiki Gardens name. I'm sure that's been cryptic for many tourists and newer residents. The second place is the former site of the Great Masterpiece, which was later renamed to Masterpiece Gardens. Operating between 1952 and 1978, its main attraction was a mosaic reproduction of Leonardo da Vinci's famous Last Supper fresco. Currently, the property is a private church camp and conference center. It's pretty easy to find the location, however. First of all, it's within sight of Bok Tower in the Lake Wales area. The entrance to the former attraction is at the end of Great Masterpiece Road, directly off of Masterpiece Road. By the way, the Da Vinci mosaic still exists. It's now located at Bob Jones University in Greenville, South Carolina. So that's about it. Just a look at a few of the highlights of the previous year and my travels. I hope this was enjoyable to watch, and here's to a busy and interesting 2021 for all of us. Let me know in the comments any place you think I should go. My travels are usually a mixture of places I've been before as well as new places. I'm pretty much up to any experience, especially if it has a historic element. Thanks again for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you know when the next video posts at Stingray Tom's Florida. Stingray Tom's Florida, traveling through time around the Sunshine State.